Last time I asked, this only applies to Generation 3, 4, and 5, this was fixed in Gen 6, what Pokemon could potentially change its gender upon evolving? The answer is Azurill. Prior to Generation 6, Azurill's gender ratio of 75% female to only 25% male didn't match that of its evolved form Marill of 50-50, which meant that 1 out of 3 female Azurill evolve into a male Marill, depending on its personality value. Azurill is the only Pokemon to do this. From Generation 6 and on, Azurill retains its gender upon evolving, despite the gender ratios still differing. Interesting. Now on with today's video. Professor Pokemon with everything you ever wanted to know about Pidgey. Pidgey, the tiny bird Pokemon, shares a category name with Spearow and Natu. It is number 16 in the Kanto Dex, number 10 in the Johto Dex, and number 17 in the Central Kalos Dex. Pidgey is a normal and flying dual-type Pokemon, which, fun fact, makes it the first normal type in the Pokédex. With that typing, gives it an advantage over Grass, Bug, and Fighting, as well as being resistant to Grass and Bug. It is weak to Rock, Ice, and Electric, and with this typing gives it 2 immunities, which is awesome. It cannot be hurt under normal circumstances by Ground-type moves because of its flying typing, or Ghost types because of its normal typing. Makes you want to catch one of these now, doesn't it? Pidgey has 2 possible abilities, either Keen Eye, which prevents other Pokemon from lowering its accuracy, or Tangled Feet, which, if this Pokemon were confused, then all moves by the opponent have their accuracy cut in half, or how the game describes it, raises evasion if the Pokemon is confused. Then there's also its hidden ability, Big Pecs, which prevents other Pokemon from lowering its defense stat. Speaking of stats, let's take a look at its stats. Its speed is its highest, although its attack is pretty good too. It has potential for its HP to surpass either of them. Its EV yield for defeating or capturing one will give you +1 in speed. In Gen 1, its special stat was 35. Pidgey is 1 foot even, or 0.3 meters, and weighs 4 pounds, or 1.8 kilograms. Pidgey has a 50-50 male to female gender ratio. It is part of the Flying Egg group, and will take 3,855 to 4,111 steps to hatch a Pidgey egg. Although that most likely isn't necessary since Pidgey practically have taken over the world. Although I guess that means a high chance of finding a rare gold Pidgey. I find it interesting that in the later games the gold coloring isn't as prominent, unfortunately, like it is in Gens 2 through 5. So let's see where you can find one. Going one region at a time. I'm not going to verbally list all the routes since I'll be here all day, so just pause for whatever respective game you're interested in seeing. Let's of course start in Kanto. Pidgey can be found in Red and Blue, Yellow, Gold and Silver, Crystal, Fire Red and Leaf Green, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. There are also several locations in the Serebii Islands where you can find Pidgey in Fire Red and Leaf Green. In Johto, Pidgey can be found in Gold and Silver, Crystal, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. In Sinnoh, Pidgey can be found on Route 229 during a swarm. In Unova, Pidgey can be found in the White Forest and Pokemon White. And lastly, Kalos, Pidgey can be found on Route 2 and 3 in X and Y. Yeah, that's a lot of locations, especially if you live in Kanto and Johto. If you catch a Pidgey, a few notable attacks, at least early on, are Tackle, Gust, and Quick Attack, although it can learn more powerful attacks like Air Slash and Hurricane, but it should have evolved twice by that point. Breaking down Pidgey's name, you get a few different name inspirations. For one, it could simply be a corruption of Pigeon, but you can also pull out a couple different kinds of birds out of its name, like the Budgie and even Chickadee, possibly. Also looking at Pidgey, it's a little chubby, so Pudgy can be another inspiration for Pidgey's name. Although I could just be making that reference because of the episode Fly Me to the Moon, where Ash makes it to Pidgey Isle, where there are a number of Pidgey that like to eat to the point where they get, pudgy, to the point where they can't even fly anymore. More anime references in a couple minutes. Its Japanese name, Popo. Its name is simply an onomatopoeia for the sound a pigeon makes. In French, you get the French word for coo and the English word for cool. And in German, its name comes from the German word for pigeon. Now that we took a look at its name, let's take a look at its design. What if I told you there were very few characteristics of Pidgey that resemble a pigeon? It seems to resemble the cedar waxwing or house sparrow more than a pigeon, but we already got a sparrow Pokemon already in that generation. It can still have some inspiration from the chickadee, but it seems to have more traits relating to ospreys more than anything else. Let's take a look at a few of Pidgey's dex entries. Pidgey is a pretty docile Pokemon, and that's probably why it's a recommended Pokemon for beginners. Yellow and the Let's Go games say, very docile, if attacked, it will often kick up sand to protect itself rather than fight back. That's also consistent in the anime too. Again, I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Stadium mentions something similar, but mentions Whirlwind over Sand Attack. Although just because it's docile, it will defend itself if disturbed. All these dex entries mention, it is docile and prefers to avoid conflict. If disturbed, however, it can ferociously strike back. And lastly, the Hoenn region games, which is probably my favorite dex entry for Pidgey. That's a common thing, the Hoenn region games seem to have a lot of the best dex entries. Pidgey has an extremely sharp sense of direction. It is capable of unerringly returning home to its nest, however far it may be removed from its familiar surroundings. Which makes me think of pigeons, probably because of the carrier pigeons, and I want to say they covered this concept in the anime too with Pidgey-Mail. Alright, fine, I've mentioned the anime a number of times already, let's go ahead and talk about that. But first off, I want to say, this is very interesting, that in the anime, Pidgey has 4 talons on each foot instead of 3. I just found that very interesting. Pidgey debuted in the very first episode, Pokemon I Choose You. Ash, unable to rely on Pikachu, had to capture this Pokemon himself and fails miserably. First breaking out of the Pokeball he throws, then covering it up with his pajama shirt, which in order to escape, Pidgey creates a strong gust, throwing Ash to the ground, and then uses a sand attack before flying away. At least Pikachu had a good time during this. Another notable Pidgey appearance is in Palette Party Panic, which I'm going to talk about this episode a few episodes here in a row, but a bunch of Pidgey and Pidgeotto are being terrorized by a flock of Spearow and a Fearow. In the Double Trouble header, Ash meets a new trainer named Casey. She challenges him to a battle. She sends out a Pidgey to battle against Ash's Charizard. The battle ends about as quickly as you can expect. Pidgey bounces off of Charizard's belly, and Charizard simply exhales and knocks out her Pidgey. This seriously reminds me of, let's say you've beaten the game already and you traverse through an earlier route and there's that one bug catcher that you forgot to battle before. He sends out his level 6 Caterpie and naturally you're like, look kid, I have 8 badges and a team of legendary Pokemon with me. He's like, I don't care, let's battle! So you roll your eyes and send out your level 74 Mewtwo. The battle in this episode reminds me of that scenario that we've all been through at least once in all those times playing Pokemon games. In Will the Real Oak Please Stand Up, Professor Oak had recently caught a Pidgey that he used to battle Team Rocket. Last appearance I want to mention is actually in Pokemon Origins. In the first episode, Red battles a wild Pidgey with his Charmander and fails to catch it. However, there is a capture montage in that episode that shows that he does manage to catch a Pidgey at some point. Pidgey appears in way too many episodes to even mention here, so these were just a few of the notable ones I wanted to point out. Moving into manga appearances, in the Pokemon Zensho manga, we can see a flock of Pidgey in Prologue Pallet Town, where the flock swarmed Satoshi, but he was saved by Professor Oak's Charmander. In the Pocket Monsters manga, Red caught a Pidgey off-screen in the Pokemon Banana League Part 1. In the Gold and Silver Golden Boys manga, Gold's first capture on his journey was a Pidgey and later evolved into Pidgeotto. And lastly, Pokemon Adventures. A Pidgey appeared in Bulbasaur Come Home as one of the many Pokemon that escaped from Professor Oak's lab. In But Fearow itself, a frozen Pidgey was pictured by Bill in his explanation on how to stop flying Pokemon. In Long Live the Nidoking, the Safari Zone tour guides are automated robotic Pidgey called Pidgebots. In Pidgeotto Pick Me Up, 2 Pidgey and a Pidgeotto kidnap Yellow's Caterpie, Kitty. In 3 Cheers for Chikorita, Crystal caught a Pidgey on her way to Professor Elm's lab. The last one I want to mention is Querulous Quillfish, a Pidgey aided in construction of the Battle Tower. Just like in the anime, there are a lot of Pidgey appearances in the manga. Now game appearances. In the Kanto region games, Red, Blue, as well as Fire Red and Leaf Green, there is an optional rival battle if you choose to explore west of Viridian City. Your rival has a new team member with a level 9 Pidgey. In Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, your rival in that game also has a Pidgey, however his Pidgey is only level 3. When you next battle him on Nugget Bridge north of Cerulean City, his Pidgey will be level 12. In the Johto region, the first gym leader, Falconer, has a level 7 Pidgey in Gold and Silver and Crystal, which is the lowest level gym leader Pokemon in any game. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, his Pidgey is level 9. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time and Explorers of Darkness, Pidgey and Seedot are the members of Team CG. And that about wraps up my Pidgey video. Just a couple random fun facts before I go. Pidgey's beta name for red and blue was Pidge. Apparently, Ekans is a natural predator to Pidgey. And also Pidgey has the shortest game cry of any Pokemon, being only 0.181 seconds long. So not even 0.2 seconds. And lastly, Pidgey evolves into Pidgeotto at level 18, which we will talk about next time. But before I go, here is today's trivia question. Who has the lowest HP stat of any Pokemon? Come back next time to find out. Until then, this has been Professor Pokemon, and hope to teach you again soon.